Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cedarville Stories Podcast. I'm Mark Weinstein, and joining me today on the program is arguably the most decorated athlete in Cedarville University history. I'm talking about Grace Norman, a four-time Paralympic medalist and a 2020 graduate of Cedarville School of Nursing program. Most recently, Grace won the gold medal in the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games and the World Championships in Spain. We will talk about these races and much more on today's Cedarville Stories podcast. Grace is originally from Jamestown, Ohio, now resides in Bloomington, Indiana with her husband, Evan Taylor, a doctoral student at Indiana University. Let's go to my conversation with Paralympic gold medalist Grace Norman on today's Cedarville Stories podcast. Grace, it's great to have you back on campus. I know that I follow your career, so you're a world traveler, but it has to be special when you come back to your roots in Ohio. What's it like for you to come back to Southern Ohio, to your family?
Yeah, I obviously enjoy traveling. It's part of my job,
Sure.
And it's a phenomenal experience to be able to travel the world, see different cultures and communities. But Cedarville and Southern Ohio is my home.
Right.
I grew up here,
Yeah.
and my family's here, which is a big pull to come back. And my whole upbringing is here, and I do feel such a strong encouragement and just backing from my family in Ohio. And it's always, and not just like my immediate family, but everyone that has supported me over my growing up years, even in college and now post-college. So there is something special. I love coming back, and especially being at Cedarville was such formative years of my life. And being able to be back, it's just like a massive hug.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so I'm going to go from there. So you have a close family, very tight. So when you come back to visit, what do you like to do? Do you just hang out at the house, at the farm, or you like to do things with your family, or how do you spend your time?
When I come back, it is hard because my sisters, they don't live at home anymore. I don't live at home anymore. So it's kind of like seeing if I can fit in different things with each sister, or if we can do it all together. When I come home, I like to go back to the farm. Obviously, it's a very safe, just encouraging, warm place to go. And I know that I can always go for a run. It's going to be beautiful, relaxing, peaceful. It's a place that I really find that I can rejuvenate in any season of my life, and knowing that my parents are there. I do like to do things that I haven't done in a while, that I can't get anywhere else from Ohio. I love just, running along the cornfields in my parents' farm. And I don't have any dogs, so seeing all my family's dogs is a fun, but just like reconnecting with them. And as you grow older, you don't get to spend as much time with your family. And so each day that I get to spend with them, I'm just that much more grateful, and I really try not to take it for advantage. Wasn't
there a time in your life, younger life, that you loved playing with the animals? I mean, not the dogs, but like the pigs and...
Yeah. Well, I grew up on a farm. So we trained goats, cows, pigs, and showed in the county fairs. So like that is a big part of my growing up. I don't have any animals right now. I have some plants that didn't quite live over the summer, but... Oh, really? Yeah, but...
Is that because you're out of...
Yes, out of town. So with the travel schedule makes it different. But yeah, I mean, it does help. Like going back to the farm, it really connects me to my roots and like to who I am and who I want to include in the rest of my life as far as habits from back when growing up. But it instilled in me a really strong work ethic. My parents... That was like, we had chores. We took care of animals. If you didn't feed them, they'd die, it teaches you a lot. And it's always fun to go back.
So in today's sports world, you're known as a Olympic champion or Paralympic champion. You've won 2 golds, 1 silver, 1 bronze over 3 Paralympic games. My question is this. So you've had a lot of success in competition, but I feel, maybe you feel the same way, that a lot of our lessons that we learn come from failure, quote unquote, air quotes, or just difficulties. So what are some lessons that you've learned from difficulties in your life that have led to your successes?
Yeah, well, I learned a lot this year. This year was one of the hardest years of my life. in the sports and outside of sports. I dealt an injury early in January, and for most of this year, I was just trying to fix it, it was concerning different prosthetics. If my prosthetics don't work, I can't walk, I can't run, I can't do my job. But I also can't make my own prosthetics. Like, I'm at the mercy of someone else's timeline, someone else's handiwork. And, it was really, really challenging. And there was a lot of different things that went into the injury process, the recovery process. And I actually spent a lot of my time away from my home and in different areas where I was trying to rehab different things in my injury. And a lot of it leading up to the Paralympics, I actually spent here in Ohio around Cedarville. And my parents were really big in the recovery process and trying to remind me that just because you can't do the big things, like I couldn't swim or I couldn't bike, I couldn't run. I could swim, but I couldn't bike or run. A good chunk of the year.
Really?
Yeah, I had about 8 weeks until the Paralympics when I could start actually biking and running together. So I took a good 6 months of where I couldn't do anything. I was swimming twice a day. My parents kept reminding me that you can do the little things. So that means like eating right, sleeping, going to bed on time, doing your mobility, doing all the strengthening exercises that are supposed to help, icing, taking ice baths, and focusing on putting down those daily habits that aren't the showy workouts, aren't like, oh, I just did, 20 minutes VO2 on the bike, or, it really made me appreciate what I would do on a normal basis. It made me appreciate being home with my husband more. It made me when you're away, whenever something is taken from you, that's all you can think about. That's all you want to be doing. And it really made me grateful for the times that it is there. But then also, I grew so much as a person and as an athlete of, this isn't going to be easy anymore. When injuries come and things are taken, it's very easy to just give up. And there were times that I wanted to give up. I was like, I don't know if this is even worth it because it's really, really difficult. And I'm a very positive outlook type person where I don't get bogged down by a lot of things a lot of times. But this was a goal that I've been working for my entire, adult life. I, winning in Rio, then getting silver in Tokyo, that hurt. And it lit a fire under me. And I didn't want to lose again in Paris. And I had 2 undefeated seasons leading into Paris. And for everything to come crumbling down 6-8 months before the biggest race of my career was like, I don't know if this is even worth it. And it really taught me, I really had to dig deep and figure out, why do I even do triathlon? Why am I sacrificing things?
What did you learn?
I learned that I love triathlon, but it was a bigger purpose than me. It was bigger than me, that God had put me on this earth for a bigger purpose than just me winning a race. And I was able to live. It took a lot to let go of the fact that I could not control what was going on, because as soon as I thought it was getting better, something else would happen and I wouldn't be able to run for another 2 weeks, or I wouldn't be able to bike for another 2 weeks. And everything I was trying to do was not working. And I just had to say, all right, you know what? I hope your plan is bigger than this, God, because right now I can't see a way that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I learned that God is sovereign. He is over everything.
Yeah.
And he's like, I know you're hurting right now. I know this injury is really, really difficult, and it is testing so much more than just an athletic person. It's testing my mind, my heart, everything. And I learned that he's got it. And his timing, it may not be what you want, and it's going to come down to the wire in some circumstances, but his timing is perfect.
And we're going to talk much more about this later in the podcast, but I don't want to totally leave the conversation. So is it a fair statement to say that leading up to your trip from the States to Paris, that there was apprehension in your mind that you were going to be able to win this Paralympics?
100%. There's apprehension in my mind when I stepped on the start line.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
And that's not like grace.
No, it's not. It's not. Especially after 2 undefeated seasons where I show up to a race, I knew I was winning.
Right.
I knew I didn't know how it was going to turn out, as far as how much I would win by, but I knew I was winning because I knew my competitors. I had raced against them 2 years in a row. I knew all their weaknesses. I knew their strengths, and I knew that where I was as an athlete, and I didn't have any doubts. I showed up to Paris not racing these girls for over a year. I didn't race all year leading into Paris. I raced once in March, and that was it. And everything else I had to cancel because of injury or other skin breakdown issues with my prosthetic, and I didn't get to race them. So I showed up I was like, I hope they're still having those same strengths and weaknesses, but my strengths were also not as strong as they were.
And I will say maybe your weaknesses were greater, right?
So definitely. Yeah.
What does it take to be a world-class athlete in terms of training? How would you go about training for a race like this on a regular basis? What's your process?
Physically, it's very demanding. I am lucky to have a really good coach that understands the working of the 3 different disciplines with strength involved, and I don't have to lay that out as far as which day to do which, but I'm the one that actually has to complete the workouts. So it takes a lot of preparation as far as if my sleep is wrong, if my nutrition is wrong, that means most likely the workout's not going to go as planned. And that affects the next day and then the next day. And so it does take a lot of physical preparation of making sure your body is in the correct alignment to complete the workouts that are happening. So on any given day, we would do 2 to 3 sessions. We would normally wake up, do a session in the morning. Normally I would try to do the key session, the one that's got the hardest amount.
And what's a session?
A session is a swim session, a bike session, or a run session. So normally they last anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. And depending on the day, they could be endurance, they could be easy, they could be have hard intervals in it. And so you think about trying to fit 3 different sports and doing all of that. Each one you have to do a hard session, an easy session, endurance session. Each one has to do that in the week. And sometimes you do 2 hard sessions of a bike, 2 hard sessions on a run, and they have to intermingle with each other. And that, thankfully, my coach takes care of all of that. And I just say, yes, I will.
You just do it.
I just do it. I have a lot of feedback in, how my body's feeling on that day. And if we need to make adjustments, but he does all of the placing of the workouts and writing of the workouts. I do work with Coach Bolander here at Cedarville for my running, and he writes the run workouts. But my triathlon coach, Greg Mueller, places them all, and kind of oversees everything. So it's very demanding. Each day can be anywhere from 2 to 5 hours of training. And in the middle, I separate them normally by about 5 hours, the 2 sessions. And I'll be eating, like refueling, taking a nap, working on social media and sponsor stuff, or just completely trying to reset, keeping my house ran, cleaning, but yeah, it's very physically demanding. So
it's physically demanding, but it's also mentally demanding. How would you compare the two? If you're not mentally ready, it doesn't matter how physically strong you're going to be, right?
Yeah. It's the same as in life. If your mind isn't strong, your body can do a lot more than you think it can, but your mind is the one that can power it to do it. And so a lot of it was just trying to train my brain to not listen to the negative thoughts. There was a lot of negativity this year because of not being able, I wasn't getting the physical affirmations that I was getting there, and I was, getting closer to my goal. And it was like, okay, I haven't biked in 6 months. I don't know how this is going to go, and your mind can easily tear you down. And especially going into one of the biggest races, I know that I cannot let my mind be weak. And a lot of that is just continuing to trust God. Be like, okay, I obviously am not in a position to do this. So I'm going to put a lot of trust on you that it's going to happen. But you do have to keep your mind sound. And part of that is doing a lot of mental training, whether that's in the Word or just focusing on the positive and being grateful, coming from a place of gratitude, which actually goes a much farther way than I think a lot of people give credit to.
Yeah. This may be a strange question given all what you just said, but so when I think back to Rio, You were the youngest athlete on the American team, and you won gold. Maybe surprisingly, you won gold. You just won gold in Paris. Which one was easier for you?
I would say Rio was easier.
Because you were able to train effectively, or what made Rio easier, or what made Paris more difficult?
Yeah, I would say in Rio, I was the underdog. I hadn't won any races, and I was 18 years old. I didn't have any pressure on myself. It wasn't my career at that point. I was just a talented kid that put in the work, but not to the extent that I have put in now. And so I just went out there like it was any other thing. I just graduated high school.
You were having fun.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to win. This is amazing, and fast forward 8 years, I've been out of college 4 years now, where this has been my job. This is how I make a living. And I think from the public's eye, they were like, they're no-brainer Grace is going to win. It wasn't a shock that I won Paris to most of the people that follow my journey, because I'd had 2 undefeated seasons, and winning by minutes. And they're like, well, no, of course she's going to win. That's what she's been doing. But it was a surprise to me because I hadn't raced in months and I hadn't felt strong or where I thought I could win. And so I think a lot of it was just, it was hard because the actual race itself was not hard. I'll say that. It was not hard. It was fun. I had a great time. I definitely had to push, but it was, as I was racing, I very quickly realized that I was going to win. Yeah. But it was really hard in the weeks leading up to it, the months leading up to it, of just trusting God that it was going to happen. Right. That was way harder. I don't feel like I was needing to trust God in Rio. It was obviously it was, but it was a different situation. You've grown. I have. Yes. You've really grown. Yes. Yeah. Right. Last year in Paris, for the first time since Rio, you were able to have your parents, your husband there in attendance. How meaningful was it to have them in Paris and see them at some point during the race? Yeah, it was incredible. I will say the atmosphere in Paris was unlike any games that I would say any Paralympians have ever experienced. It was the biggest games ever with the most sold out stadiums, the most sold out. Yes. And for a triathlon, you're outside, your course spans miles, and there was not a section of that course where there wasn't someone standing there, and sometimes layers deep. And it was so cool. And my parents had made their own homemade signs and flags. I saw them. I'm sure you did. I saw them. And they weren't your typical flags. So anytime that I saw one, I knew that was one of my family. And they stood out. Yes, they definitely did. It was just really cool. I obviously couldn't see them on the swim, and the bike, you're going so fast, and it was very technical that I didn't take my eyes off the course. But the run, where I knew that I was pulling away and I had time, was so special. I got to see my parents. I got to see my husband, Evan. My sister was out there just yelling, climbing over the barricade, getting yelled at. I was able to, see that and feel that excitement, and being able to see them and look them in the eye as I'm running past with a smile on my face and being like, that's just a massive thank you to them, because they poured so much into me this year, but also, my entire life, that winning is giving it back to them. And it was just so special being able to celebrate after. It took me a while to be able to get around. I had to go through media and everything, but whenever I think my husband was the only one, he kind of went through all this security. So I don't know how we got through all the security stuff, but just beeline towards me. And I was like, there he is. I gotta go. And it was just so special. We were both crying, and my coach was crying. Everyone that was meaningful in my life was there, and it was really, really special to have them. Yeah. So let's talk about the race and the other competitors. So, and the other medalists. So you battled Lauren Steadman, who's been a great competitor for you. She's from Great Britain for years. But you also became very close friends with her. And this is one place where I would say I've seen growth in Grace Norman, is that at Rio, probably she was a competitor. Yes. Paris, she was a friend who you're competing against. She was also in your wedding, right? Yes. So speak to your personal growth as a person, how you can
look at someone in a totally different way and still have that competitive drive?
Yeah. I think looking at the way my career has unfolded, when I started in parasport and paratriathlon, I was a kid, and I looked at it as any other race, as in with track and field in high school. I didn't like any of my competitors. I wanted to beat them all, and for me that was like, okay, make them the
enemy?
Yeah, kind of, but yeah, like I didn't want to be friends with them because I felt that being a friend with someone you were competing against was kind of weak, and I didn't want to alter my mental state. I wanted to be tough. I wanted to be strong, and if I was nice to someone, it was normally after the race. It was never before, and I didn't want to cultivate friendships because I wanted to win. And I didn't think that could go hand in hand. And over the past 8 years in my career since Rio, yes, I knew Lauren leading into Rio, but I didn't know her. I never hung out with her. We never were on the phone with each other, and I never expected to have a friendship with her. But over the next 8 years, we race each other every year, 6-7 times a year. You get to know people.
Right.
And I think I started realizing that if I wanted to be the best, I had to train with the best. And at that point, she was the best. Leading into Tokyo, she beat me.
Right.
And I realized that she is a human and there's no reason to make her out to be an enemy when she's just trained. Like, our lifestyles are probably very similar. We're just living in different countries. We're doing the same things. We're swimming, biking, running to the best of our ability, trying to be the best in our sport, trying to advocate for Paralympics in general and parasport, and raising the bar. And if there is a competitive, you want the races to be competitive. I started doing training camps with her and realized that she's actually a really cool person. And I was pushing myself being with her. And that was a way that I mean, you can look at it that way, or you can say, well, if you know she's your best competition and you're training with her, you know exactly what she's doing. Right. So it does open you up to be very vulnerable because she also knows what you're doing. Right. And you get to kind of figure out strengths and weaknesses of the person, and you could use it against each other if you wanted. She's been a very strong competitor and a good competitor. And I respect her because she races her own race when she's out there. And, that is all you can ask of a race, and it's been really fun to develop our friendship over the years. And now when we're on the race course, obviously before the race and after the race, we're friends. I have the ability to not let the friendship matter whenever I'm racing. I obviously respect my competitors, but when the race is on, we're competitors. But when we're not racing, we're really good friends.
How was that friendship manifested? How did it begin? Were you both receptive to being friends, or was Lauren maybe a little apprehensive?
I think I was apprehensive because I was still young. How
much older is she?
I think she's 4 or 5 years older. Okay. Like, she's like my older sister. She's a little older than my actual older sister. But it was during COVID. She reached out because we both like to bake. She's both. Oh, really? Yeah, we like to be creative in the kitchen. And she was like, why don't we, exchange recipes and do like a bake off and like show like, oh, wow. Yeah. And I was like, okay, like kind of strange, but okay. And then through that, I realized that she's a real person. She has a real life. She's not just this competitor that I'm like, I need to beat her. Like, there's no reason to, make someone out to be someone they're not. And when you get to know them, it's like, she's actually a really cool person. Yeah. And that started our friendship. And then when COVID let out and everyone was dealing with everything with that, it was a slower friendship build. And then when she won Tokyo, I was genuinely happy for her. Mm-hmm. Whereas I feel like in Rio, if she would have beat me, I would have just not liked her. It would have made it worse. Right. Whereas in Tokyo, I knew that she had put in the work. I knew that I had put in the work, but she was better on that day. Yeah. And it didn't change our friendship. Yeah.
So let's dive a little bit into more of your personal and spiritual growth. And one evidence, and we've been talking about Lauren, I want to stay there, is once you had finished, and finally Lauren came in, she finished third, you went over to her and gave her a hug. And You think the Grace Norman of 2016 would have done that?
I think so, but I think it would have come from a different place.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I still would have given her a hug, but I wouldn't have known what her year looked like. We had very similar years, and as far as she was dealing with injuries, I was dealing with injuries, and we spoke to each other about it, not in depth of everything because, there is still levels of boundaries that I wasn't very open with many people about my injury leading into Paris. And so I knew how much grit it took for her to be there, just like myself. And so I think the Rio version hug would have been like, nice, good job, you finished, I beat you, and it wouldn't have cared anything about the person.
Yeah.
Whereas Paris, I knew what she was going through because we were friends and we have shared things together, and I knew how hard I had worked to be there. And I was very genuinely proud of her and was caring for the person.
So can you put into words how you have seen the Lord transform your life, even in the past 4 or 8 years, through lessons you've learned, through trials, through joys?
It's really cool. It's cool to look at it as a journey and as there's still so much room for growth. I think this year a lot taught me that I cannot depend on my own strength, even though I want to. And it's easy whenever everything's going good. Yeah. And it's very easy to, I've said this so many times, but it's very easy to be grateful and be like, thank you, God, this is awesome, I just won another race. But the moment it gets kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to do that, I'm gonna pull this away from you a little bit, I immediately go to God, and I don't want that to be the reason. So I'm seeing in myself that, yes, I had the correct response to go to God immediately, but I want to grow to where I don't need those. And obviously trials always are going to test you, and you're going to want to cling to God in the hard times. But I want him to be my breath, my life, and the reason I do everything, and not just because I don't think I can do something. And so there's a lot of room for growth still in my spiritual life and in every aspect of my life. But it's been really cool to see the transformation of just how I view my job and triathlon as a joy instead of a burden. And I do believe that God has given me that gift, and he's also helped me switch that perspective to be so grateful now. Over the past 4 years, it's really changed, and I don't see it as fearing to race. I see it as an opportunity to see how fast I can go on that day and glorify God with that. And so that's been a really cool shift over the past 8 years as well. Yeah,
it's really neat to hear. And it's really encouraging to hear you articulate that. Because I know, I followed your career since you were a Cedarville student, and it's definitely a transformation that's encouraging. So let's go back to the race. I have a couple examples before we close up today's program. And another thing I noticed from post-race interviews that you mentioned with your NBC interview that you were coming near the finish line. I don't know how close you were to the finish line, but you knew you had the race won. And you spotted your family and you gave them a wink or a nod. What was going through your mind at that time? I
just knew that I 100% knew that there was no way I could not win this race. And then 2, just being able to, I think that was my way of sharing it with them of, someone can be there watching someone else race, but the moment that they make eye contact or a physical affirmation of, I see you, thank you for being here. Without you, this was not possible. And so just being able to be so excited and feel their excitement and make that connection. It was very cool how the race played out because I did have pretty much the entire run to soak it in and just enjoy it and see my family on each lap and pick out a different person each lap. Okay. And it was very special just to be able to share it with them. When did you think in your mind, like, this is my race to win? When did you think you had it won? At what point of the race? Probably it was a 5-lap, 1-lap swim, 5-lap bike, and a 3-lap run. So probably on the 2nd lap of the bike. So very early, really. Yes. Which was, my coach and I had talked the days leading up of what would have to happen in order for me to lose. 1, I would have to get some type of mechanical problem that was not my problem, like a flat tire, something happened to my bike. The second thing they would probably have to somehow drop me on the swim and make minutes in front of me on the bike.
Sure.
So I knew whenever I came out of the water first and I came onto the bike and I felt in control on the bike, where I wasn't pushing outside of my control or my realm, and they were right, I just kept it there. I kept in a comfortable position. It was Lauren was leading after I had led for the first lap, and we traded positions. And I could feel that I was stronger on the course than she was, but I didn't necessarily need to overcome her on the bike until the last lap. When I made that move, I knew it was over. And when I went out on the run, I was in third because I had to change my prosthetic where they didn't have to. I was in third by like 5 seconds, and I surged past them in my just normal running pace and kind of looked behind, saw them cling together, but not cling to me. And I knew that they knew there was no way they could stay with me. And so that just sealed the deal. But I knew I had it in the bike, but it sealed the deal in the first 200 meters of the run.
How does that knowledge impact how you race going forward? Does that give you so much confidence that you're more aggressive or you're less aggressive? How does it impact how you compete from that point forward?
In the race?
In the race.
Yes. It gives me a lot of confidence. But it also, I'm not someone to hold back. I also have I hold pride in my run, and it's a place that I can show my greatest strength. And it would do a disservice to myself if I slowed down. And whenever you get that confidence boost of, yes, like this is working, I am going to win, I just let that carry me and my legs, and running on God's strength and just enjoying it and being grateful. And when you're running from a place or racing from a place of that, it's really hard to slow down anyways.
So Grace Norman, like probably most people, not only racing against competitors, Lauren and whomever else, you're also racing against yourself.
Oh, 100%. I race against myself every time.
Yeah, that's cool. So another incident from the race, from the NBC interview, which caught my attention, I loved it, is when you told a reporter that your gold medal race was all God. Explain that. I mean, you've already talked a lot about it, but explain it some more.
Yeah, I think for me, it was, I still am just in shock that it happened, because obviously my physical body was in no way or shape form ready to compete. We had 8 weeks from the time that I was cleared to start working, and everything was okay. I called Coach Bo and Coach Bolander from here and was like, we got 8 weeks. How can you help me make my run come back? Cause I haven't ran in a good month. It's been a month. And my triathlon coach was on it with the bike workouts and swimming and everything worked together. But I knew that it was going to be very difficult. That road was not easy. And it wasn't just the race that I was referring to. It was the entire journey getting here. This year made me incredibly grateful for when God blesses me with good times and God blesses me with easy times. Yeah. And so I think it was just, there was no way that I could take any credit for that, because I know what I was going through this year. There is so many people that can speak to the fact of what I was going through this year. And I just knew that there was no way I could stand there and be like, yep, I did that. It's like, that would just be such a disservice to my faith, my character, and God, who was literally the one writing the letters of everything this year. And he made that race happen. It could have easily been, something else happen. And the fact that he was faithful and I trusted that he was going to be faithful. So there was no way I could take any credit for that.
Yeah. As great as this gold medal is that's between you and me, which represents your athletic success, you really, or what excites me is you really won God's gold medal this year by surrendering whatever and allowing him to take your life.
Yes. And I will say, as hard as that was, and still is in every aspect of life to do that, it's so much more freeing than you can imagine. And it means this gold medal represents more to me than just an athletic achievement, because it tells the story, at least when I look at it, of my journey to get it.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of tears, a lot of asking why this was happening, and a lot of just hearing, it's okay.
Yeah.
You have to trust me.
Yep.
And then realizing that was what I had to do.
Yeah. Good job. How do you use your platform to share your faith with others?
A lot of it is how I choose to live my life, and how I interact with others. I think in Paris, obviously there was a lot of media and cameras, and it's that was a really good way to be very vocal about it.
And you were.
Thank you. And I think this year was the first time that I felt that it was actually coming from a place of being very extremely genuine. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to be like that, God did that, but I was like crying and because I knew, what we just talked about. But God works in amazing ways, and being able to be a part of a community of people that most of us are dealt interesting situations in our life, whether we have a prosthetic, a different disability, but being able to show that life is so much more than that. Right. And also being from a place of racing, it's more than racing. It's more than an athletic achievement. Right. It's how you live your life. It's how you see value and choose value in yourself and others. And I know that God has blessed me with this opportunity, and just being able to vocalize it in the right places, and whenever it's needed, just be silent and let my actions speak and my life speak. Well
said. So what's next for Grace Norman? I know in 4 years, the Paralympics is in LA. I assume you're going to be working to defend your gold medal?
Most definitely. I will be in LA. I'm excited to come to a home games. But what's next? Right now, racing doesn't start again until March for next year. And we have an actual 4-year quad instead of this year, which was 3 years.
Okay.
So a lot of it is kind of just reevaluating different goals, what I want to add into my life, what I want to take away. Maybe some different sports on the horizon, as far as maybe going for cycling as well. Just a different challenge. But we haven't quite decided on that. But yeah, I'm focused on being, putting time into others whenever I couldn't do that this year. Putting time into being a supportive wife of my husband, who has his flourishing career of his own, which I wasn't able to be part of as much this year because of what Paris took. But yeah, I am in off season and fully enjoying it and giving back to everyone that poured into me this year.
That's fabulous. And enjoy your time, enjoy your break. And Lord willing, I'll see you, if not before, I'll see you in LA. I want to see you race in Los Angeles. So.
Definitely.
Grace, thanks for sharing this great medal with us, and representing Jesus well and your alma mater, Cedarville University.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cedarville Stories Podcast, brought to you by Cedarville University. Be sure to come back next week when we'll share another Cedarville story for God's glory.